Hello and welcome to the Peterpodcast. I'm your host, reporter Taylor Clydesdale, and with me this week is Autonomy Ward Council candidate Ryan Waudby. Ryan and I are talking today about various issues affecting Peterborough, including what he believes to be a lack of transparency at council.
Whether or not there is meetings behind closed doors, or it's just the fact that there hasn't been enough open dialogue about certain issues before they make a decision, I think is huge.
So what you're saying is that it's not necessarily that backroom meetings are happening, but it just appears to be that way?
It appears to be that way.
And we're also going to talk about the PDI sale, as well as options involving, or potentially not involving, the Parkway for moving people around Peterborough. So, hope you enjoy the show.
I am Ryan Waudby. I'm running for Autonomy Ward to be a city councillor. Born and raised here in Peterborough. I'm 33 years old, so that's something that is very unique to me compared to some of the other candidates out there and across the city. It's a little bit about me. I currently am working for a family business, my dad's business. I do the sales there. Actually, it's because of one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I've been into many customers' homes, and they've really voiced their frustrations about things in the city. And it could be small things. It could be, the way that the curb is on the front of the property. It could be the major things like the Parkway, the PDI, right? There's all kinds of different issues that people have brought up, and I found it very interesting because I wasn't in this position of being a candidate yet, and I was hearing these frustrations. And a big thing for me, and the main reason why I'm running, is the future of Peterborough. I got two kids. 10 and 6 as of right now. They'll be 11 and 7 very soon. But as of right now, there's no plan. There's no, we've been dubbed as the retirement community. Now, we haven't marketed it that way, as per your article recently.
Which you can read on MikeWorth.com.
Yeah. We didn't market it that way, but that's what we're known as. And we need to change that. And we need to start trying to encourage more sustainability here in Peterborough. We can't be just a retirement community anymore. We also need to be a community of innovation and change. So for me, sitting back and hoping that somebody will do it, it doesn't work. Because I've let that happen for about 8 years now.
Yeah, so you're applying for this position of council person in Autonomy Ward, and maybe you can tell us about, what makes you a experienced candidate that makes you worth being in that position. What are the resume bullet points that you would rattle off to someone to really sell them on the fact that you're qualified?
Well, like I said, born and raised in Peterborough, so I've been through every moment of my life here except for college. I did leave to go to Ottawa for school, went to Algonquin College. I took business there. Once I graduated, I was a retail business analyst in Toronto for a very short period of time. It was a cubicle job. Not my thing. I like talking to people. I like interacting with people. So for me, it didn't work for me. So I had asked my employer at the time, would it be all right if I stepped aside? And they said, well, you know what? Where do you want to go? This was Blue Notes. I don't know if you remember the clothing store that used to be in Lansdowne's place.
It still is, actually, I believe.
No, now it's the Peterborough Square.
Oh,
they
Peterborough
moved
Square.
shortly
Sorry.
after, right?
Yeah.
So they said, is there any store that you'd like to go work at? I said, I want to go home. I want to go back to Peterborough, right? So I ended up going there. I was a general manager there for a little bit. And then, kind of been to 2 other jobs since then. Worked at Future Shop in Whitby, because at the time there was no jobs here available to me that would be able to accommodate having 2 kids and having a house and family. So I ended up going there, and then I ended up coming back because my youngest daughter was born, and I ended up coming back because I didn't get to see her for the first 5 weeks, and commuting every day, that did not help. So I came to work for my dad again after many years of not working for him. But that does give you a little bit of background about me. Mm-hmm. So the business standpoint, it really touches on everything. And I know the city is kind of like a business. It is a business, but it's kind of like a business. The position I'm aiming to go for is more about the people's voice to that business. So being able to have the open communication, networking, all those type of skills coming from school, but then also a little brief moment here. For 4 years, I've been a member of the Hastings Prince Edward Regiment here in town. There, if you don't know, it's the military. There, they really train you for physical stress and mental stress. So with the mental stress side, I think it's a really good tool to be able to bring to this, because the job, you're going to be making tough decisions, right? It's going to be challenging. You're going to have a lot of people for something, you're going to have a lot of people against, and you're caught in the middle. So being able to handle that stress and still keep your calm, cool, and collective, I think that's something that's going to be a huge asset to me coming to council.
So what do you do when you're presented with a decision that, you have the majority of the community is against something? Not naming any particular issues, because we are going to dive into some in the later half of the episode. But what do you do when you have a community that's against something, but you see the advantages and you see the draws and you can see why the city would want to jump on board with it?
Transparency. That's one of the biggest things I've heard going door to door is we don't know what's happening at city council. We have no idea, and everything's behind closed doors, right? Now, whether or not there is meetings behind closed doors, or it's just the fact that there hasn't been enough open dialogue about certain issues before they make a decision, I think is huge. I'm assuming we're talking about PDI.
Yeah, in a sense, yes.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that it's not necessarily that backroom meetings are happening, but it just appears to be that way?
It appears to be that way, because honestly, I'm not in a back room. I don't know. I can't, unless I'm there, I can't say that something's happening, right? Mm-hmm. But we can all have that ideology that something's happening because things are starting to get done, but there hasn't been much talk about it. And it seems like, I know there's a lot of, there's a couple of councillors out there that have been very vocal that there's been backdoor dealing. And I don't think that's...
Can you name a few?
I'm sure if you do a quick Facebook search, you'll see, that there's been new terms to the new sale on PDI, and they haven't been disclosed. I've seen that a couple times on some Facebook posts from the councillors.
There are a couple claims by councillors,
but I don't know. Yeah, like as for facts on that, whether or not that's actually happened, I don't know.
Okay.
Right, but the main thing is when you do have something that's that divided, is you need to make sure that you are listening to your constituents. That is your job, and it's your job to relay that information to staff and explain the concerns. So that is, regardless of what the issue may be, that is really the job of council, is to be an ear for the people, but then also be that voice for those people.
So if the community is against something like the PDI sale, it's your job to represent that community that says that.
Exactly. So even though there's going to be tough decisions to be made, and sometimes things don't, like I said, you could have one group that's very, very vocal, you have another group that's very, very vocal, and they're both from the community you represent. And that's where it's trying to find the middle ground, but presenting both cases on both sides to staff so they can understand, okay, this is where the community is good, this is where they're not good. Where do we find that balancing point?
But how do you do that, though? As it's an easy thing to say, and I feel like a lot of politicians, before they get into office, they say that they want to do that, but then once they're actually in that position, I feel like it's an easier said than done type of thing.
Oh, anything worth doing is always hard, right? Like, I mean, it's not going to be easy. You have to really open yourself up, and I feel like I've already started to show that. If you go on the City of Peterborough website, on Peterborough Votes, you'll see under the candidate information, the candidate has the most amount of ways to contact me. Because I want to stay open, I want to stay available.
Can I shoot you a message on Instagram?
You can attempt to. I'm still trying to figure it out. No, I don't have Instagram on the City Hall website because I'm still trying to figure it out. From my understanding, you snap photos and kind of little snapshots of your day of how it's been kind of going and hashtagging the odd thing here and there. My wife's trying to explain it to me. I'm still struggling. So
yeah, I was raised in this generation. I'm still struggling with Instagram.
Yeah.
So.
Well, for me, Facebook and even Twitter has been relatively new but old. But yeah. Like it's been a very interesting goal. But it's very important that somebody in my position hears as much as they can, so they can really relay that information on, whether that be having little pop-ups here and there, even as an existing counselor, having a pop-up to say, hey, come and express your, how am I doing? How do you think we should be dealing with this? I think that's very important, and that, again, that is the job.
So and that's how you propose, talking to your constituents and the people in your ward. Yeah. How do you propose communicating with other counselors?
You know what? I think we're going to see a very big change this election. That seems to be a focal point. Everybody's enough of the 6-5 votes nonstop. And I know a lot of the people of Peterborough are very fed up with it. I think this election is going to force everybody to sit down and actually have conversations. And if those conversations mean that you're using up your time that's allotted to you to speaking at council meetings and being open dialogue, so be that, right? I think it's necessary that people are upfront and honest about things, and the only way to do that is by literally talking, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, if people aren't talking, there's a lot of assumptions made, right? So I think what we need to do is, let's say Diane as an example, or Daryl, regardless of who wins the election, if I need to talk to them about something, it should be just an easy conversation. It shouldn't be, oh, you voted this way on that or this way on that. There's a side there. That shouldn't be the case. It should be just open dialogue, because that's all that the people of Peterborough really want. Right?
Yeah, just to go back to the 6-5 thing. I mean, Mike's not here this week, but I'm going to channel my inner Mike right now. Just to repeat an argument of his, but 6-5 isn't necessarily a bad way to end a vote. Because it shows that there is some division, and usually with a lot of issues like PDI or the Parkway, there is division even in the community. Mm-hmm. But it's when those 6-5s keep happening over and over and over again. So it'll be interesting to see what changes after the fall election, and whether or not we keep getting those 6-5s, whether or not it's more fluid, or maybe it just changes to a different number. Maybe all the votes end up in 7-4s.
Yeah, at the same time, 6-5 it'd be the same scenario as if it was 11-0.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, that... You have to have some opposition at some point or another. You need that, because then those concerns are also being addressed. But at the same time, you have a general committee meeting. Everyone votes on whether or not they'd like to see it proceed. They state how they feel, right? Then you get some period of time to go back to your constituents, talk about it, and talk with the other councillors to be able to come to a conclusion. And that's that period of time where it's important to get out there and start talking.
Yeah, and I know one councillor, Dean Pappas, he tried to hold some town hall meetings. Maybe his methods weren't a little bit as official as they should have been, because I know the clerk's office, there was no formal process where there should have been for hosting town hall meetings with councillors, but there was an effort made to connect with people in the community in those in-between meetings and ask what they thought about those issues. But I don't know if those meetings ever got the number of people that they had hoped they had got.
That is a big challenge, right? So you can't just focus on one thing. You have to be diverse, because there's all different kinds of ways of communicating. For instance, I already just explained, I don't know about Instagram. I'm trying to figure it out because it's something that's new to me, but that is another way of communicating, right? Facebook is a way of communicating. Twitter is a way of communicating. Having meetings is a way of communicating. Calling your house is a way of communicating. And not knocking to call on the door. Right?
Yeah, not to say that instant.
I say house because that's my house number listed on the Peterborough site. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, you have contact. You have all different ways of contacting. There's all kinds of possibilities to have your voice heard.
For some councillors, though, I feel like they do try to make an effort to reach out to the public and try to consult them and let them come in and delegate to council. But it's also that these are councillors who they have a full-time job. Mm-hmm. They pull in the hours necessary for being a counselor, which, there's a lot of community work in being a counselor too. I know, just to use an example, but, one of your competitors, Leslie Parnell, she goes to a bunch of community events.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there's also, going to council meetings, which sometimes can drag late into the night.
Yes.
So being a counselor, being a, running a business or being in a part of a business in your own capacity as someone who's trying to make ends meet, that's a lot of time. So how do you make the time to to do that proper consultation with people?
Well, every event you're going to go to, right? You can't. It'd be hard to make them to every single one, because I'm sure there's one every single day. And like you said, some people have full-time jobs, right? In addition to being a counselor, which is phenomenal, right? Because that's you've signed up for a very large commitment.
Yeah, because some people don't. Some people don't realize that all of our counselors huge. They don't make all their money from being counsel people.
No, but at the same time, you signed up for the huge commitment. You kind of have an understanding, and you can only kind of have an understanding, especially if you're like me and first time running. I have an idea of the kind of hours that may be required, but I also seek that information out before announcing that I want to do this, because I want to make sure that, if I'm going to do this, am I going to be the right person for autonomy if I cannot possibly donate my time and be able to constructively create time for the people of autonomy?
And that's why
balance it out, right?
And that is why Cam Green dropped out of the race, because he was opening a new business and didn't have the time.
Yeah, exactly. And some people forget to look at that aspect. They might really, really want to change, but at the same time, if you can't devote the time to the people that you're running for, it's probably not a great idea, right? Because it's going to require a good chunk of time. So I was informed it can go anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a week. So if you already have a full-time job, you get 8 hours sleep, that's it. Right? So it all depends, right? Obviously, it could be easily 40 hours a week. It could even be more than that. It depends if you want to go to every single thing that's being put on by the city.
Even just council meetings. I remember, when I was going to council a bit more regularly than I do now, but some of those meetings could go until 10, 11, 12. There was at least a couple that went past midnight. Yeah. And how do you make decisions when you're going past midnight? Because I know some people are like, oh, just leave it till the next meeting, but
then it just keeps.
Then you don't want to make a backlog.
So, if I'm not mistaken, that happened this spring, where time was getting close, and they said, you know what? We need to end this because it's going to run far past the time. And
was that the meeting where both, I think PDI and the Parkway were both on the agenda? That was a big agenda that they put off.
Yeah, and then they had a bunch of others. Just those two alone could have 2 meetings on their own.
Yeah,
right?
I think
there's a lot of information there.
If I recall correctly, they did have a special council meeting in the week in between for those issues.
Just for that, yeah.
Yes.
But that's the way that you be able to manage that when you are looking at an agenda where it's like, this isn't possible to be able to do this in an appropriate amount of time and still make good rational decisions, right? So I think that's why they end up dividing that out, especially on those kind of topics. Those are some big ones.
Yeah, well, counselors are going to have a lot to say when it comes to issues like PBI and the Parkway. But I think we're going to leave it there for now. We're going to come back in just a couple of minutes, which will be like 10 seconds to our viewers. But we're going to come back and we're going to do a deep dive into some of the topics that we've kind of been glossing over so far.
Very much glossing.
All right, perfect. So we'll be right back. So we are back on the Peter Podcast, and Ryan, let's talk about some Peterborough issues. There's a lot of issues we can talk about. Yeah. But let's start working our way down the list, because we're going to be talking about the Parkway. And what are your thoughts on the Parkway?
I believe that we need a north to south corridor of some kind. I think what we should be doing is continuing the development that we already started between Clonsilla and Sherbrooke Street. I'd like to see that completed.
Make that connector that council at the time chose not to make.
Well, and that's just it. And a great kind of example of how that can help neighborhoods in the area, especially Goodfellows. And I was down there canvassing, and I had somebody come flying past. They were racing, literally. And I had to feel like I had to jump out of the way when I was on the sidewalk. So obviously there's a bit of an issue for speeding vehicles through neighborhoods and residential streets. Yeah, now that's a little bit different, but
there's been a couple of reports, I believe, from city staff, kind of about how the lack of a parkway is building up a lot of traffic on residential streets.
It's cut-throughs, right?
Yeah, and Fairbarn is usually the one that people point to when they say, "Look at what people are doing here at Fairbarn." And having been in rush hour traffic on Park Hill and
Oh,
seeing
it's
the
insane.
lineup of cars trying to make a
It's
left-hand
insane.
turn onto Fairbarn, it's true. There's a lot of cut-through traffic in those areas.
There is absolutely a lot of cut-through traffic, but we also got to look at when Medical Drive got put in. It alleviated 9,000 vehicles a day off Monaghan, which is still considered a residential street. So, I mean, we really gotta look back at to where our planning was initially, right, on how the city was going to be developed. If you look at like the Under 7 campaign, if the police's campaign over 7.
Remind me?
Okay, so you get a ticket for driving over 7 kilometers over the speed limit.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, I don't know about this.
It's late in the day, okay?
Okay, well, that's true. Okay, so basically, if you get caught doing over 7 kilometers an hour, you are going to get a ticket.
Was that recently?
Yeah, this past 2 months.
Oh, okay.
First month, they issued like 496 tickets.
Okay, I remember reading something
You
about
remember
that
now? Okay.
Yeah, took me long enough.
It took you a while, but that's a very important campaign, and part of that was to try and stop people from doing the cut-through traffic, right? I think the Parkway is one of those tools that can help alleviate some of that traffic and have it going down just north to south. I mean, it makes sense. Now, once we get to Jackson's Park, I don't know. I'm still stumped on that one.
Do you think that you can build the Parkway, have it end at Park Hill where Jackson's Park is, and then resume it on the other side? But you still have that cut-through traffic around Fairmont.
Yeah, I don't think that makes sense either. As of right now, it's either we continue it down Park Hill and go up Fairburn a little bit, or we build the bridge, right? And as of right now, I don't know. I'd like to see.
And the city doesn't know either, because
No.
there are a number of reports out right
absolutely.
now that are kind of looking at options for improving traffic flow in the city
Yeah.
and looking at alternatives to the Parkway, as well as whether or not we should build the Parkway in the first place.
Well, and you know what? 70 years ago, we thought we should build a Parkway, right? And it's been a debate every single step of the way until, and today, and it will continue on, right? And I've heard the alternatives, a ring road, right? But with the with the population increase that has been set out to us by the province of achieving, I think it was 34,500 people coming in from now until 2041, 23 years. That's a lot of people. That ring road will now be part in the city for the areas that I've heard that people are wanting on the route that it's talking about. And we're already starting to see that now with some of the development that's already happening. So I think that the Parkway, we should be getting on that. We need to start actually focusing and getting it done. The longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes. And I don't want to see it get any more expensive.
So you had said that, we need a north-south corridor of some kind. So
Yeah.
let's say, you're part of a council that, and I don't think this is ridiculous to believe at all, that you're part of a council that makes a decision not to build a parkway. You're in the minority of, we've decided that we're not going to do it and we're going to strip it off the official plan. So what then would you do to deal with that problem?
You know what? I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know. That it's tough because as of right now, we got to look at what has turned into main corridors that weren't initially main corridors. So you have Ashburnham. You're coming off the highway, you get on Ashburnham, you go the Parkway. Can now go on Lansdowne. You can go up Monaghan. You can go up George. You can go up Brayley. There is definitely routes that are going north to south, but they end at Park Hill. Right. So the north end of Peterborough, they're kind of cut off a bit. Right. At the same time, we have some destination locations forming in Otonabee Ward, and already have some there.
We are soon to have the Lily Lake Road subdivision, which is going to have hundreds of homes in it.
Yeah, that project alone is massive, and that's something that, again, as of right now, they're going to go out. They're going to neighborhood, turn left or turn right.
Yeah,
right. That's their options, but at the same time, those roads are still not designed to tailor that much traffic. So. That's a whole nother issue, but it's true that there is some major issues, and with all that development up there, how many Costco members are going to be up there? They're going to be traveling down to Costco because realistically, that is a very big destination location for a lot of people in Peterborough.
Yeah,
and then in addition to that, we're starting to see some entertainment go down there, the casino, right? That's also going to attract people down in that area, right? So we need something, and we need it to stay away from the school zones, and we need it to stay keep the traffic calm on the residential streets, so kids can be kids like I was, where you can go out and play ball hockey, right? And the neighbors wave to you; they don't go flying past. Right? That's what I'd like to see for Peterborough, and that just takes a lot of planning. Whether that be the parkway or not, some of that can also be alleviated from. Well, they've started to talk about the lights and how they're going to not synchronize. What's the word I'm looking for?
But they're going to optimize.
They're going to optimize the traffic flow in Peterborough, and that's the one way that they plan on helping that. But that's only one step. It's there's not ever going to be one solution to that problem.
So let's say that it comes down to you on whether or not the bridge over Jackson's Park should be built as part of the parkway. Do you think Peterborough should do it?
That's a hard question to ask me.
I tend to ask.
I just finished saying that I don't know. Right? I need to see what the information presented in front of me is. I need to see what's financially going to make sense. If we were to take it and curve it around the park, so dodge the park, what's that corner going to look like on Fairburn? We just lose another access point into the park, right? Because there's going to be more traffic there. That intersection will need to be redone.
Okay.
Right. So there's definitely pros and cons to each side of that.
So it's kind of a tentative. I support the parkway, but let's kind of wait and see what information we have.
I want to have an informed decision, not a emotional one.
Yeah.
Right?
And there's a lot of information coming forward that's going to be related to the parkway in the future.
Yeah. So. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one, though.
Oh.
Thanks for asking me that tough one. I was going to say it's only tough just because I'm torn inside about it too, right? So it's a tough decision regardless of where anyone stands.
Yeah, and I think some people tend to make it a black and white issue of I'm pro parkway or I'm anti parkway, and it's not necessarily that that's the case. It's you can be in support of certain parts of the parkway, you can be in support of the whole thing except for the bridge over Jackson's Park. You can say I'm not supportive of building the parkway, but we need something.
Well, see, and here's one thing I've heard door to door is people are very concerned about what is now considered green space by the majority of public for the parkway corridor that is connecting from Sherbrooke from Clonsilla to Sherbrooke. But they're using it as a path, and you can go walk through there. You can clearly see that there's a path there that people have been using. What I'd like to see is, well, one, let's put the street, because it's not an expressway, it's not anything like that. It's a road, it's a street that will connect those two. But then at the same time, let's make that area more accessible to people. Let's make it an actual trail, right? Where in the wintertime, it can actually be, snow removed off of the sidewalks and off stuff like that, so people can still have nice, healthy, active outdoor living within all seasons of the year.
So you're saying it can be both? It can be both a street and a trail?
I think so. I can't see why not. I mean, after all, it's a 2-lane road. It's not 4 lanes, right? So, and that is a very wide area. Have you walked through there?
I've been meaning to.
You've been meaning to? It's a very wide area.
Yeah, and I have seen how wide it is. Like, it's a very wide, it's long
huge.
path.
And at the same time, I can't see why we couldn't do that. I think it just makes sense. It's, let's continue that Parkway Trail, because that's what it is called, from Jackson's Park all the way down to where it is today, right? So I would just like to see that as an official trail maintained by the city, so then that way people who are pushing children in strollers or have mobility issues are able to still use that and still enjoy that space.
Okay. Well, moving on to the next issue.
Yep.
We're going to talk PDI. And, recently, and,
Very recently.
Very recently, and who knows, this is going to come out on Tuesday morning, and something could change by Tuesday morning that I couldn't have predicted, but, the most recent news is that the city of Peterborough and PDI have come to an agreement with Hydro One, and the deal is going to go through. It still has to go through the Ontario Energy Board, which the city estimates could take about a year, and then the sale for $105 million will take place. What is your opinion on the PDI sale?
I don't like it. I don't like it. I've read as many reports as I possibly can. I've tried to gather as much information as I possibly can, and it all still says bad idea to me.
Why does it say that?
Well, as I was mentioning to you earlier off the camera, I contacted Hydro One today, and I got what the I'm trying to make sure I get the right wording here. Basically, your distribution fee based on the volume of power that you were buying, right? So you have a fixed rate, and then you actually have this other fee that Hydro One charges, and so does PDI. PDI was half of the cost. And I find it frustrating to see things like recently there was a graph put out by PDI and Peterborough Utilities that showed, okay, if we were to continue on this track, PDI is going to, the cost increase is 28.8% increase, and here's Hydro One. But what they failed to show us was that's only for the 10 years that we have an agreement.
Yeah.
After that, I believe they cross.
So the agreement is for the first 5 years. It's a 1% reduction in rates and
a freeze,
and it's frozen at that rate for 5 years. And then the 5 years after that, the rates increase, but only up to the rate of inflation at that time.
Yes.
And then it's at that 11th year that people are saying that Hydro One would jack up the rates. I was talking to John Stevenson yesterday, president of PDI, and he says that that's not the case because hydro rates are regulated, and there's no way that they could jack up the rates in that 11th year, and they would be skyrocketing from
that's
what they
interesting because Hydro One's already been approved for the rates they're selling, right? They already are selling it at that rate. It's Peterborough then at the 10th year is no longer under the contract that was made by our council. It is now just another division of Hydro One. So Hydro One has already gotten the approval to charge the rates they're charging today. And so I'm going by the rates that's being charged today will increase our cost on our distribution side. And for my house for this past month, it would have increased my expenses by 25% on today's market.
So you think that for the areas that are serviced by PDI, let's say that for the people that are watching and not listening, let's say that the rates are about here versus, let's say the rates for the rest of Ontario that Hydro One services are about here. So at that 11th year, it's not necessarily that they're going to skyrocket out of control, but they're going to go up to the level that Hydro One has them at now.
Exactly. That's what we do know, is that they're going to reach to the point where they are today. But realistically, in the future, that can change. It could go up. It could go down. I'm not a mind reader, right? I don't know how that's going to look like. But at the same time, neither was PDI.
Do you think that and I asked Kim Zippel this because, this is a relatively new issue because the removal of the board and the president of Hydro One. The city says that it hasn't affected the deal. It's not going to affect anything moving forward. But I'm going to ask you what you think of that because it's a pretty big change for Hydro One. And Hydro One is kind of the other big party in this deal.
It's a massive change for the province, right? There's been a lot of changes in the province very recently. I don't think it'll affect it personally.
Okay.
Because everything was already in motion prior to that, right? And we've come to an agreement.
Yeah.
Right? So that's not going to change. The Ontario Energy Board, they're the ones that can still make that change happen of not letting things go
now,
through.
and this isn't confirmed because I haven't talked to the clerk's office yet about this, but in order to undo a decision at council, you don't just need a majority, you need a 2/3 majority, which is kind of a hard thing to do. But it's theoretically possible, and again, like I said, I haven't confirmed this with the clerk's office at the city yet, that, if a new council moved in and they did have that 2/3 majority, they could withdraw their application with the OEB and withdraw their partnership from Hydro One. I'm not sure what the logistics of that are, because now that an agreement has been reached, it's possible that Hydro One could sue the shit out of the city for doing that.
Oh, they more than if I was Hydro One, that's what I would do. Do you know what I mean? Same if Hydro One pulled the plug on us at this point, it's already cost us. What was the last figure? 1.1 million in legal fees and.
That sounds
like there was a lot of.
That sounds right to me, but the exact numbers are escaping me at the moment.
Yeah, but it was a high figure.
Yeah,
it was a high figure. If Hydro One pulled away, I'd want that money back.
Yeah,
right. So I can only imagine there'd be some kind of recourse there. But with that being said,
so if the decision came up, if someone at a council meeting said, "I want to have a vote to withdraw our application process and pull out of this deal,"
first I think we need to look at what the actual deal was about. And how we came to the conclusion we did. And when I say we as the city of Peterborough, because it was our representatives that voted in favor of it, I think what they were looking at was the books. They were looking at it as the business. And they weren't thinking about the long-term effects it was going to have on the people. So they were looking at it as like, oh, okay. And this is what I've been told by a Northcrest councillor, was that we were making approximately $800,000 a year, and they were going to take the sale of PDI, the $55 million, and they were going to reinvest that into power generation through PUC. That was going to generate them a 6% return, which is $3.3 million on 55, right? Sounds good as a business, right? But the overall effect of the community, that's a different scenario, right? Because if everybody has less money in their pocket now it's going to affect our economy as a community.
And that's at that 11th year then when
well, and I'm thinking long term, because we got to think long term. Short term gain, long term loss, right? Like, I mean, that's a big thing. But now, even with that $55 million and the 6% return, our Conservative government just pulled the plug on the projects on the Trent-Severn Waterway, which I truly believe that's where that money was going to come from. So now we're going to have $55 million and we don't know what to do with it. Except for Daryl Bennett had mentioned on 90.5 FM yesterday morning that he wanted to reinvest it into capital investments and things like that. But that was, I think, just an opinion. I don't think that was an actual plan. I think that was an off-the-cuff kind of statement, because their true goal was power generation. And that kind of got ended very abruptly. And we lost $1.5 million on that project. So it's a very delicate scenario. But again, when it comes to people who are council members, they're representing the people of Peterborough. And if we're already having an affordability crisis here in Peterborough, and I'll call it a crisis because it is, how can we turn around and say, in 11 years, 12 years, 13, 14, 15 years, your hydro rates are now going to be this, right? But it's going to be higher than what we're currently at, because as PDI has sold, how we've sold PDI was the fact that it was going to cost a lot of money. Hydro One's going to want that money back. I mean, that's business. That's how that works. They're going to want that money back, and the way they're going to have to do it is bring it up to the rates of where the rest of their customers are, right? So for 10 years, we know where it's at. 11 year, I have a good idea of where it might be, and that's not going to be where it is on the 10th. Okay.
The last issue that I want to talk with you about before we sign off for the day is the opioid crisis.
Yes.
Right now, locally, the most recent word on it is we might be not getting that temporary overdose prevention site that we thought we were going to be after the change in government. But something needs to be done here in Peterborough to deal with the fact that we have opioid deaths.
Oh, there's a major issue here.
Yes. And so far the province has not been very detailed in what it wants to do to deal with that problem. So at a municipal level, what do you think we should be doing to deal with this crisis?
We need to use the tools that are already here with us. We have, there's a couple different things. Peterborough Public Health, they're informed on how to, different ideas of coping with this issue and how we can get a manage on it and how we can help those people that need the help. But at the same time, it's coming in from somewhere. We had right across from, I believe, St. John's School in the South End, you had neighbors complaining about suspecting that there was drug deals going on at a home. 7 to 8 years is how long it took for the police to be able to actually arrest somebody. And they did. They were arrested, which is phenomenal, right? That's one more person that's no longer selling opioids. For me, so you need... and another one is mental health. Mental health is a very, very big one. I have a friend who's battling some addictions. I don't want to say his name, but he is battling some addictions. And his reason for getting to the point that he got to, knowing what the possible outcomes could be, was because he was self-medicating. And that's a big issue. So another problem is we don't have doctors, right? So those people who are needing the help can't find it because it's not available. And if they try to seek it out, they feel ashamed of doing so, and they do it in more of a private setting than a public one.
Well, the cost of seeking help is also a factor as well, because you have people who want to seek out doctors or even go to a rehabilitation clinic if possible. But in the case of Peterborough, we don't have a publicly funded or subsidized clinic where people can go and receive affordable care.
There's going to be, I'm trying to remember, I want to say Rapid Access Medical. Peterborough Public Health did a trial run on it a couple of years ago. From a meeting that I was at Peterborough Public Health. They had said that they're going to bring it back, and it sounded like that program was designed for people to be able to seek that help. And if they do need anything immediately, which majority of them do, need anything immediately for seeking help, they're able to direct them directly and make a referral to a doctor, make a referral to this, and they can get that help immediately, right away. As an example, for my friend, for him, his help came in with police. That was his rock bottom. And you know what? I'm glad it was that, and that was his rock bottom as opposed to the other alternative, right? Because I would hate to see, I'd hate to lose a friend. But he ended up having to leave, go to rehab, clean up, and he's come back, and he still battles it every day. It's not something that just kind of goes away with a snap of your fingers. It's a lifelong battle. Right.
So what do we do to help out people like your friend?
Well, for him, from what just talking to him, he says we need to open our ears in the medical industry. So with Peterborough Public Health, they have a little bit of funding that they get from the city. Having this rapid, like I said, I believe it's rapid RAM. Having things like that and having the city back that up and have the support of the city, I think is very, very important. So I would be, but at the same time, I'm definitely open to every option because there's not just one solution to this problem. This problem has God knows how many solutions, right? But none of them will work on their own. It's you need a little bit here, a little bit there, and together they work as one unit.
What are your thoughts on the idea of the opening of the overdose site, the temporary overdose prevention site, what is essentially a safe injection site?
I'd like to see exactly what is going to be there for guidance for those people. If there's going to be extra services there as opposed to just a safe injection site, I'd like to see what that looks like before I can tell you exactly my opinion on it. I'd like to know whether or not, when somebody comes to the door is like, hey, did you know you can, this is how you can get help. But at the same time, you don't want to turn people away because if that's what it's known for, then it's a waste of money, unfortunately, right? Because people stop going there to use that facility. But Peterborough Public Health had stated that the reason for the safe injection sites, one of the big reasons is to try and eliminate the spread of STIs through needles, right? I get that, right? But at the same time, we need more things there. Like I said, it's not just one solution. There's multiple things that we can do. And I think that should be kind of like almost under one roof, right? Like when I mean one roof, I mean literally one. Yeah. I really think that it should be just all housed in one area. So then that way, when you go there, you can get help to everything that you need right then and there. All your resources are there and your support's there, right? That's what I'd like to see. So right now on the safe ejection site, I don't know. And the reason why is because I don't know if they plan on doing all those extra things. And if they do plan on doing those extra things, I want to see how they plan to go about doing it without having people turn away from that facility.
Okay. So we're just about to wrap up for the day, so I'll leave it at you. Is there anything else that you want to add?
Well, obviously, the next 4 years are going to be a big one for Peterborough, especially with the official plan. We didn't talk about that too much. But the official plan is a very, very big one. It's going to really dictate how Peterborough is going to grow, what's the guidelines for Peterborough. And I think it's time for a change. I think it's time for a city that's not going to drag its heels on everything and be a little bit more progressive in thinking. But at the same time, we need to reflect on where we've been so we can still go towards the future. So, I'd like to see if I can get some votes there from Autonomy Ward. I'm looking straight at the camera now. No, but honestly, I'd like to see the amount of support that I've already gotten. It's been fantastic. So I'm hoping that we'll have a lot more people out this go around, and I'd like to see a lot more people go out and vote regardless of who they vote for, what ward they're in. Let's get a big turnout. Let's break that 50 mark, right? Because right now I think the last one was 46, so let's get that 50 mark at least. And thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being on.
Even though there's some tough topics there.
I try. But
you did well.
But for everybody else, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.